you said that rightly that the idea of freedom is and has been for a very long time the central political value in our political discourse. And that's really important strategically. Whoever manages to win the struggle to appropriate and use this idea more effectively is likely to win the political argument.
Hello, and welcome to the Politics Girl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. Well, today is Election Day in America. And if you're listening to this on November 4th and you haven't already voted, please get out there immediately and have your voice heard. There are 52,000 elections across the country today. And as the Republican Party refuses to reopen the federal government and the president abandons our Constitution, it is essential we use every opportunity we have to vote against this administration and the party that enables it and throw sand in the gears of this rising autocracy. This is a pivotal moment in our country's history. But instead of being scared and depressed, I want us to embrace hope and talk about what we could be rather than what we are. So today we'll be having a conversation with Alex Zakaras, a professor of political science at the University of Vermont, who has long argued that profound inequality in power, wealth, and status has fundamentally undermined the American social contract. And in his new book, Freedom for All, What a Liberal Society Could Be, he explores what it would mean to extend the liberal promise of freedom to everyone on equal terms and how it could actually transform our economy and our politics. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, professor, author, and big picture thinker, Alex Zakaras. Welcome, Professor Zakaras.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You just wrote this book about freedom for all at a time when the country really feels like it's moving towards freedom for very few, right? So tell me why you felt called to write this book and what it's really about.
I felt called to write this book because liberal ideals and institutions are in crisis right now, not just in this country, but across the world. And I think we need as many people stepping forward as we can to offer a sort of clear, principled defense of liberal institutions. And let me just step back actually and say a little bit about what liberalism means, because it's right in the title of the book. You know, when we hear the term liberal in our ordinary political conversations, we often use it to mean the left, right? The more liberal you are, so the farther you fall on the left of the political spectrum. And it's important to see that that's not the meaning of the term that I'll be using today. When historians and political scientists talk about the term liberalism, they're really describing a political outlook that's united by, I would say, a shared goal on the one hand, and a shared set of strategies on the other. The goal is simply freedom. Liberals try to create conditions under which people can live freely, and liberals tend to value personal freedoms above all. So we think about freedom of expression and freedom of association, the freedom to love who you want to love, and to work and own property and such. And then liberals tend to agree on a set of strategies, and these will be familiar because of the strategies that would-be authoritarians hate, to try to achieve those goals. And they include constitutions and individual rights overseen by independent judiciaries and checks and balances and democratic accountability, economic markets, a free media, right? So this is like a raft of institutions that liberals tend to agree on. And one thing that's important to see about liberalism defined in that way is that it's kind of a big tent, right? So Ronald Reagan on the right falls within the liberal tradition, and Franklin Roosevelt on the left falls within the liberal tradition, and they disagree about a whole lot of things, but they agree about those things that I just said.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, when you think about people saying, you know, the one thing that Americans can all agree on is freedom, that seems to be their number one priority. Like when you put words out there, freedom actually ranks higher than America itself as a word. And yet we're watching so many freedoms right now being taken away in the name of America. And you think, well, this is completely antithetical to how the country was supposed to be functioning. And yet we're watching it happen because somehow people have made being liberal a dirty word.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there's been over my lifetime in this country and throughout the West, really, a broad consensus in support of liberal institutions. And it's really in the last decade or so that consensus has started to unravel. The leading threat, obviously, has been the rise of a sort of militant, populist, anti-liberal right. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in many parts of the world. And it's certainly happened to the Republican Party in this country. So much of the intellectual energy behind the Republican Party right now is coming from people who proudly describe themselves as anti-liberal or illiberal. Right? I certainly don't need to tell your viewers that we're witnessing escalating assaults on almost all of the fundamental liberal institutions, checks and balances, the rule of law, democratic accountability, First Amendment rights. So yeah, we're in a moment of real crisis, and it's a crisis that's been precipitated by the rise and transformation of the Republican Party into, in many ways, an anti-liberal party right now.
Right. And then you wrote this book, Freedom for All, with the goal of doing what?
Yeah, so one of the concerns that I've had about people who are stepping forward and defending liberalism in this moment is that many of them are striking and have struck a kind of defensive tone, right? And that's entirely understandable. We're confronting, as I've just said, these grave and imminent threats. But the worry that I have about that is that it's not enough. We, as liberals, also need to be able to point the way towards a future that we want. We need to be able to describe in ambitious and clear and principled terms a future that's very different than the future that we have now, a future that really speaks, among other things, to people's deep economic anxieties in this country, deep anxieties about growing inequality of wealth, of power, of opportunity. Right? And liberals aren't always doing the best job of doing that. And so part of what I'm setting out to do in this book is to show how the liberal tradition, and I should say, I've said that liberalism is a big tent. The kind of liberalism I defend in the book is very much a kind of left liberalism in the style of FDR. And I'm trying to recapture and sort of articulate that vision for our moment and show that liberalism is not just important because it'll save us from oppression now, but it's also a tradition that can point us towards a significantly more egalitarian, fair, and humane future for our society.
Like you're saying, it's a big tent. There's a lot of people that are going to want that. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves that this country has never really been just and fair for everyone. I think about myself when I say the Pledge of Allegiance in general. Now, I was raised in Canada, right? So we didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance. But when I got down here and, they started saying it at my son's school and that kind of thing, I always sort of struggled with freedom and justice for all, because clearly not everyone believed that. And then as we moved into the Donald Trump years, I used to say all a whole lot louder just to kind of make a point for those who would prefer freedom for some at the expense of others. And I'm seeing that it's almost a gleeful taking of people's freedoms that I'm watching among our fellow Americans right now. I'm thinking about when those SNAP benefits were scheduled to be taken away and the amount of people on social media who were sort of celebrating that, like starving Americans was something to be celebrated because their team was doing it. And I thought, where are we and how far have we come?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. There's been a struggle for the soul of liberalism raging in this country for quite some time, as between those who are serious about everyone having an equal claim to freedom and those who aren't. Right? And this struggle goes all the way back to the American founding and rages through the debates on abolition and early feminism and through the civil rights movement and through the FDR era. Right? I see these as kind of recurrent moments in this struggle, on the one hand, to broaden the scope and accessibility of freedom for everyone, and on the other hand, as you say, to take pleasure in denying it to some. I certainly agree with you, and I see us locked in that struggle right now.
It's quite astounding, actually, because I always say that the people that are in charge now, the Republican Party as it stands, because I don't really think they're classic Republicans. I think we're looking at MAGA, but they are sort of bolstered and organized by people with a very long-term plan, the people from the Federalist Society, the people from the Heritage Foundation, the people who had a long-term plan, be it that they wanted to overturn workers' rights or civil rights or women's rights. When Roe got overturned a couple of years ago with the Dobbs decision, that was a 40-year plan come to fruition. That was people who said, we don't want this, and we're willing to wait and work and stack the courts till we get what we want. It's long-term planning come to a head, I think, is what we're watching. And I think it's impossible not to acknowledge that there is obviously a racial hierarchy in America, that we have a massive problem with patriarchy. And now we're talking about reversing things like LGBTQ rights as well. So we've got women being pushed back in traditional roles. We're back into racial profiling. We're currently rounding up brown people in our streets. We're not teaching Black history. Gay marriage is back on the chopping block at the Supreme Court. And then to top it all off, we now have this rise of anti-intellectualism, right? These attacks on educational institutions. You're a professor, you have to see this, because it seems to me that a divided, uneducated public is certainly a lot easier to control than a cooperative, critical thinking population. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. So a
Yeah,
lot of
let
what
me
you
just, I'll
said
sit
is
back and you can tell me.
No, so I mean, certainly we've seen in this administration a kind of extraordinary attack on expertise, whether it's expertise, among climate researchers, public health professionals, by extension, an attack on universities, on meteorology, and this is sort of a classic part of the strategy that authoritarians employ. Experts are people who hold some power to expose lies and outright fabrications, which would-be authoritarians rely on, which the Trump administration relies on profoundly, right? And so you've seen an attempt to discredit and delegitimize experts across our society. And that plays into the sort of consolidation of power that we're seeing, and plays into the attack on not just free media, but independent civil society organizations that are repositories of expertise, among other things, and universities among those are part of any sort of healthy information ecosystem in a liberal society. And when you look at places where illiberal leaders like Viktor Orban in Hungary have succeeded in taking power, you've seen a sort of concerted effort to tamp down, crush, and bring these kinds of civil society organizations and the experts associated with them to heel, for sure.
Yeah, and they all seem to be following a very similar playbook, a sort of Putin-style playbook of taking the media, consolidating the rich people to your benefit, silencing dissent, because I think Orban's kind of following that. You see them doing that in Belarus. You've got Russia and China kind of collaborating, even though they don't have the exact same goals. They both have the exact same plans for themselves, which is sort of dominant power that's never ending. And then you've got people like Trump joining that group. But I think that it's this downplaying of the importance of education and intellect that creates a more pliable society, a society that doesn't ask questions or challenge authority. And then I think about a number of people who have made the argument that liberalism itself failed to address the problem of things like racial hierarchies or racism itself. And by ignoring it, they kind of entrenched the problem, and then that's now coming up to bite us. Do you notice that? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I feel like you sort of speak to that a bit in your book.
Absolutely. Let me step back for just a moment and talk about some of the economic changes that have happened in this country over the last 45 years, and that have been justified by a kind of what I call a sort of rogue version of liberalism. We sometimes hear described as neoliberalism. That is a version of liberalism that really places a great deal of emphasis on the free market above all, that emphasizes deregulation, privatization as much as possible, shrinking the scope of government, reducing the size of public investments in things like education and healthcare, attacking organized labor, and so undermining the bargaining leverage of workers, all in the name of economic efficiency.
Could I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So we were talking about liberalism earlier and how that's a big tent, and you have everyone from Ronald Reagan to FDR in that tent. Then if we talk about neoliberalism, what you're talking about is like limiting scopes of government, limiting things. That is more Reagan-esque, right? That is more what we think of as the conservative view of liberalism. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely right. So if you think about this, as I said, like FDR and Reagan as part of this liberal conversation, with Reagan's election in 1980, you saw a real sort of ascendancy in this country of what I'm now calling a neoliberal outlook, which captured not just the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party under Clinton for sure, right? I mean, Clinton was leading the way in accelerating free trade globally and deregulating the financial industry, among other things, right? So this has been a paradigm that's become dominant, that was dominant in our country for some 4 decades, and that really paved the way for the crisis that we're in right now. And I spend a fair amount of time in the book talking about that. So you asked about race, and that's part of the story. So there has always been, on the kind of right side of the liberal spectrum, a version of liberalism that's not very much interested in realizing greater equality, and that's mostly interested in reducing the size and scope of government, turning business loose, and scuttling the kinds of major investments that we would need to, among other things, correct racial hierarchy in this country. All right, so you mentioned racial hierarchy. I mean, the numbers just jump off the page if you're paying any attention, right? The average wealth of Black families in this country is 1/10 the average wealth of white families in this country.
And that's systemic. People need to understand
It's absolutely systemic.
That is not because Black people work at 1/10 the amount. It's because it's everything. If you go back in time, it's that when you came home from the war and the GI Bill allowed soldiers to buy houses and go to college, that wasn't offered to Black soldiers because even though they could have used the GI Bill, a lot of colleges weren't accepting them. So then they couldn't buy houses, so they couldn't build wealth, or they built suburbs out in, certain areas outside of cities, but only white families could move there. So as those houses grew in wealth and those families could grow their wealth, that was not offered to Black families who were redlined into their certain districts. So that it is something that we drew into our institutions. When people talk about institutionalized racism, when people talk about CRT, when they were throwing that around a lot, this kind of concept of we made it more difficult for certain races. And then we blamed them for not being where we are, where they had no chance to actually get there. And then if we don't address that, then it's understandable that people would say, well, you guys are missing the boat every single time. Like we're not where we're supposed to be because these institutions didn't meet us there. And now we're making the institutions even harder and harder for anyone to benefit from. So we're coming into the holiday season, and this is when we get dressed up. And you might not feel like it right now because everything is depressing, but I think people are really going to need celebrations this year. And part of celebrations is what we wear, which is why I want to talk to you today about Honey Love. Whether you're driving in a car to go visit your family and friends and you need a comfortable bra for a long day, or you're having a fancy New Year's Eve party to ring in the new year and hope for the best, and you want to have a snatched little body, either way, Honey Love can help you with that. At the end of the day, quality holiday outfits start with the right foundation. Honey Love bras and shapewear will give you the comfort and confidence you need so you can just sparkle around a holiday party knowing you look amazing. Or maybe you don't plan to get dressed up at all and you just want to be cozy all the time, which means you don't want to spend time tugging on some bra or having underwire dig into you. In that case, you need Honey Love's Cloud Embrace Bra, which is a modern wireless t-shirt bra with sturdy, lightly padded cups that feel like a cloud against your skin. Now that thing sells out all the time for a reason, so if you want one or you want to put one in someone's stocking, now is the time to buy it. Honey Love is an independent female brand whose products are intelligently designed by women who actually wear them, including their founder Betsy, who is very involved in the development of each and everything they sell. So treat yourself or someone you love to Honey Love this holiday season. Right now you can save 20% off at honeylove.com/politicsgirl. Just use the exclusive link honeylove.com/politicsgirl to grab that discount. And after you order, if they ask you where you heard about Honey Love, please support the show and let them know we sent you. Celebrate the season feeling confident and comfortable with Honey Love. I genuinely cannot believe how gushy I get about my laundry detergent. It's absurd. But I cannot stop raving about laundry sauce because it is really that good. I am genuinely considering giving it to people as a Christmas gift. Laundry detergent. Have you heard of those favorite things parties where you bring 2 of your favorite things and then all the people at the party get to choose things they want to try? I feel like laundry sauce would be great for that kind of party. And look, I get it, it's detergent. But I'm telling you, this laundry detergent is so awesome. It looks cute on your shelf, it does an amazing job at cleaning, and it smells incredible. And there are so many scents you can choose from that it really becomes personal to pick out the right laundry sauce for you. My favorite is still the Indonesian patchouli, but for fall and winter, we're doing more Siberian pine, and I ordered my husband, whose whole family is in the Pacific Northwest, the new limited release Oregon mint. I only buy the big boxes now. I keep them on the shelf so you can actually see them because they look really sharp. But laundry sauce is the full experience. I use their detergent pods, but they also have scent boosters and dryer sheets and fabric conditioner, all designed to infuse your laundry with high-end fragrance, fight stains, and make the entire process less horrendous. There really is something about this high-end detergent that elevates the experience. So this holiday season, turn your routine into a ritual with laundry sauce. During their Black Friday Cyber Monday signature sales, you can save up to 40%. Get $75 in free gifts and free shipping at laundrysauce.com/politicsgirl20. This is the perfect time to treat yourself or gift the world's most luxurious detergent to someone you love, even if that person is you. Trust me, your laundry has never smelled so good. laundrysauce.com/politicsgirl20. Now we're making the institutions even harder and harder for anyone to benefit from.
And as a result of those structural injustices that powerfully shaped our public policy throughout the 20th century, Black youth are way more likely to grow up in neighborhoods blighted by poverty, in food deserts, in polluted places, right? Schools are still highly segregated by race. I mean, we really lost that struggle after the civil rights movement. And schools with high concentrations of minority students tend to have significantly lower levels of per capita funding, right? Lower teacher salaries, larger class sizes, right? I mean, we can just keep going down the list. I mean, you know, we could talk about the criminal justice system. We haven't even started there, right? That Black people in this country are far more likely to be pulled over by police, more likely to be arrested, more likely to be wrongfully convicted, more likely to suffer police brutality. So, yes, and to come back to this conversation about liberalism, right? There are those who would say, well, wait a minute, we want a colorblind society. Isn't liberalism about colorblindness, protecting everyone's rights equally and not giving preferential treatment? I mean, we've heard this from the Roberts Court right now, right? But seen against the background of these cumulative systemic injustices, which have produced these deep patterns of heritable inequality, it's unconscionable to now say, well, wait a minute. You can't make any investments that might correct these imbalances. You can't provide preferential access to loans for minority-owned businesses, for example, which have suffered discrimination at the hands of federal government for decades. It looks really dishonest. And again, it's a sort of abdication of the fundamental liberal aspiration to realize freedom for all.
Yeah. And I think that's why I think a major idea in your book, and correct me if I'm wrong, seems to be that we've broken the social contract in this country, that we've allowed our economy to be exploited. We've turned our corporations into these kind of tyrannical overlords. We've given them so much money and power to then bankroll our politicians, who then more or less support an authoritarian style of government because it works for them and really only for them. Would you mind expanding on that a bit, this idea of our broken social contract?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked already a little bit about the rise of this kind of Reaganism, beginning in the 1980s, neoliberalism, depending on what you'd like to call it.
Market-first capitalism.
Market-first capitalism. Yeah. The effects over the last 4 decades have been really stark, right? Inequality is as high as it's ever been in American history, as high now as it was during the infamous Gilded Age, the age of robber barons, right? Which nobody looks back on as a good time in our history.
Boy, I wish we could have that. It's only the Gilded Age TV show that we watch, and we're watching the rich people in that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. But, you know, I mean, wage growth has stagnated. Yes, wage growth has stagnated for working class Americans during this period, even as it's skyrocketed for the wealthiest. I mean, costs have risen sharply so that, you know, I mean, housing and healthcare and education is less and less affordable, not just for poor families, but middle-class families. We have a number of credible studies now showing that rates of economic mobility in the United States, I mean, this is something we always used to pride ourselves in, right? That Americans tolerate a measure of inequality, but we expect widespread economic opportunity and mobility. Well, that's no longer true. It turns out now that if you're born poor in Denmark, you're much more likely to make it into the top quintile of income earners than you are in the United States. But in a way, what's most telling to me out of all of this is the research about economic insecurity. You know, people's incomes are more volatile now, their jobs less secure from one year to the next. If you look at things like mortgage foreclosure rates and evictions and personal bankruptcies, I mean, these are way up for middle-class families as well as for poor families over the last several decades. So this is just not what our society was supposed to be. Americans have, as I say, tolerated a measure of inequality, but they've always expected at the same time that with hard work and saving, you could get ahead, you could buy a house, you could send your kids to college, you could afford to live where you worked, you could get health care, right? You could enjoy a measure of economic security. And it's that sort of understanding, which I describe as a sort of implicit social contract, which is really frayed and eroded for so many millions of people. And, you know, the political right has been quite effective in our moment in harnessing the accumulated alienation of working class folks over the last several decades. And the Democratic Party has not been as effective in speaking to and harnessing that anxiety. So I really worry that it's not just that this metastasizing inequality has created really difficult conditions for a lot of people, difficult economic conditions for a huge number of American families. But it's also fed a growing disillusionment with our political institutions. I mean, we've seen cratering approval ratings for American government across all the branches right now, partly because people just don't see it as capable of addressing this deeply felt crisis. And again, then this makes people, as you were saying, vulnerable to demagogic appeals by people who are, coming in and promising to blow things up and start over in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of America being a place where anyone from anywhere can make it if they just work hard enough hasn't been true for a long time for most people. And Trump tapped into that by saying, it's not your fault. It's not your fault you can't make it. And then he uses a lot of blame. It's these people, it's these people, it's these people. When the irony, of course, being that the Democrats can't sell it properly, but they're the ones trying to make things more fair. They're the ones right now with the government closed, trying to fight that you can't keep raising our healthcare premiums. When we're, there's 73 countries in the world that have universal healthcare, and then there's one that doesn't, and that's us. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at the inauguration of Trump's second term, and the people that stood behind him on that stage, I look at it and I'm like, it's like they're trying to create a new feudal system, right? Like, these are our aristocrats, these tech bros, and they are out there making billions of dollars, propping each other's companies up. Like, if you look at the stock market, there's about 7 companies holding each other up right now. They're all tech companies. And what happens to regular people in that world? What happens if you're building ballrooms and having great Gatsby parties when people can't feed themselves and people can't, we've been there before. Like you said, it was called the Gilded Age, and we ended up in the Depression, right? Regular people, if we carry on the way we are going to become essentially serfs to these tax oligarchs, where we are surveilled by people constantly. We own nothing. It's sort of like the feudalism of the past, where there's an aristocracy and then there's the rest of us, and we pay tithes to them. We own nothing, and we sort of serve at their pleasure. And I think that's what people don't want, but they don't understand how to stop it from coming. And I think one of the great things in your book is you talk about building this countervailing power in America, a power that's able to stand up and hold these people accountable for, say, destroying our civil rights to their own benefit, or allowing them to poison public discourse by buying all of our media, or completely perpetrating our climate crisis, right? Because it serves their financial ends at the expense of our health and safety. So tell me about countervailing power, because what do you mean when you say that? And then how do we create that? Because we definitely need that. Well, it's getting colder, which means it's the perfect time to head to Quince and refresh your wardrobe with pieces that let you look polished, stay warm, and save big without compromising on quality. Quince has all the fall essentials. Think 100% Mongolian cashmere from $50, washable silk tops and skirts, perfectly tailored denim, and all at prices that feel too good to be true. I am waiting for their burgundy silk maxi skirt to come back in my size, because it's exactly what I want to wear this holiday with a little matching cashmere sweater. Quince is able to keep the prices low by partnering directly with ethical, top-tier factories and cutting out the middleman. That way you get the luxury quality pieces delivered directly to your house at half the price of similar brands. I've worn their navy blue cashmere boatneck sweater that I bought last year so much, and it still looks great. I spent the entire summer in their oversized blue linen button-down. Their stuff is really great. So find your new staples at Quince. Go to quince.com/politicsgirl for free shipping on your order and 365 days of returns. That's QUINCE/politicsgirl to get free shipping and 365 days of returns. To get free shipping and 365 days of returns, go to quince.com/politicsgirl. I have recently learned that how you sleep is just as important as how long you sleep, which is why it really matters what kind of mattress you're using. When you finally hit the mattress at the end of the day, you want it to be comfortable. You need it to be comfortable, which is why I am talking to you about Leesa. Leesa has a lineup of beautifully crafted mattresses tailored to how you sleep. Each mattress is designed with specific sleep positions and feel preferences in mind. The mattresses are designed and assembled in the US for exceptional quality that you're going to feel the difference from day one. Premium materials that deliver serious comfort and full body support no matter how you sleep. Leesa has been tested and awarded Best Hybrid Mattress by New York Times Wirecutter and is exclusively featured by West Elm as their go-to mattress partner. And Leesa isn't just about sleep, it's about impact. Every year they donate thousands of mattresses to people in need, while also partnering with organizations like Clean Hub to help remove harmful plastic waste from our oceans. So go to leesa.com for 25% off mattresses, plus an extra $50 off with the promo code PoliticsGirl, exclusive for our listeners. That's LEESA.com, promo code PoliticsGirl for 25% off mattresses plus an extra $50 off. Support our show and let them know we sent you after checkout. That's leesa.com, promo code PoliticsGirl. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack and hydration sponsor. IQ Bar is the better-for-you plant protein-based snack made with brain-boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without a sugar crash. IQ Bars are entirely gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, GMO-free, and have no artificial sweeteners. They are, however, packed with clean, delicious ingredients to keep you physically and mentally fit, like magnesium, lion's mane, adaptogens, and lots more. With less sugar and carbs than the alternative, the plant-based protein bars are a smart snack choice, and the zero-sugar drink mixes will hydrate you with electrolytes while improving your mood and boosting your clarity. With over 25,000 five-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyle with IQ Bar. Their brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all three: 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including their sampler pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text PG to 64,000. That's text PG to 64000. That's PG to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Tell me about countervailing power, because what do you mean when you say that? And then how do we create that? Because we definitely need that.
First, let me just start by echoing some of the things you said. I mean, we hear a lot about unequal income and wealth in this country, but in many ways, unequal power is a more fundamental problem. It lies upstream of unequal income and wealth. And you know, your audience knows this well enough, right? The richest Americans are just in control in this country. They bankroll our parties and our politicians. They pour billions into our elections. I mean, in the 2024 election cycle, 100 billionaire families spent $2.6 billion of election-related expenditures, right? Their lobbyists are teaming around the centers of power. They own our giant media companies and so control the tenor of our public debates all too often. All right. And so, yeah, as a result, ordinary people feel like they've lost access to the levers of power. And so I do think you're right that countervailing power is an important point of emphasis in my book. We need to be laser focused on rebuilding the sort of organized citizen power that is the only way, really, of pushing back against the accumulated power of oligarchs in this country. And so this has several different dimensions. I think rebuilding the power of organized labor is the first and most important of these. Organized labor has really atrophied in this country, and this is one of the ways, I mean, you mentioned healthcare, but this is another one of the ways in which the US is really an outlier among affluent countries. It used to be in the 1960s that a third of American workers were unionized. It's now around 10%, 6% of private sector workers. And that's just, you know, that's way lower than it is in many other societies. And it's both, it prevents workers from bargaining collectively and earning fair wages. Unionized workers earn better wages. They have better benefits. They have better vacation policies. They have better satisfaction at work. But it also has really undermined the political power of working people. I mean, unions were one of the key vectors through which ordinary people could have their voice heard, have a seat at the table politically. I mean, if you go to places like Northern Europe, you know, in the Nordic countries, 60+% of people are unionized and 80% of people are covered by collective bargaining, right? So that's one of the real differences. But it's also drawing on the power of organized labor, we have to think about other ways of mobilizing constituencies that are hurting right now. So I think about the Debt Collective, for example, which is an organization that's done really interesting work in organizing people who are in debt, people, among other things, who have educational or medical debt, right? And they've staged debt strikes, for example, which have drawn attention to some of the flagrant abuses in for-profit higher ed. For example, you're seeing in Los Angeles, among other places, renters unions find ways of building collective power, again, and channeling the voices of ordinary people into the political process and building solidarity and strength. I think the conversation has to also include political parties and what's happened to the Democratic Party over the last half century. It's professionalized. There are many fewer working class voices in it. It's gotten in many ways hollowed out. Political parties used to be vibrant membership organizations that provided constituent services at the local level. You'd go to your local party organization and it would be a vibrant group of people who were there, present and forming long-term relationships in your community. And not coincidentally, it was a way for ordinary people to have a voice. They would nominate people who would go to party conventions and eventually and pick candidates for office, et cetera. And much of that has been sapped away as the Democratic Party in particular has become more and more reliant on big money donors. And so we need a sort of concerted effort to revitalize and build the forms of organization and the kinds of bottom-up institutions that can draw ordinary people into the political process and empower them to push back.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you anymore on that. I mean, I think much of what we have to do to rebuild this country is about rebooting politics, but rebooting the political parties in general, because clearly, as I was saying before, the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party. They're not the party of small government or fiscal responsibility. They certainly aren't the party of life. They're just spending hand over fist money. They're blowing up people indiscriminately in the oceans, right? Like, it's just everything they claim to have stand for. It doesn't exist. But the Democratic Party proper doesn't feel like it's doing much better based on where they're at right now. So I feel like there's a lot of us out here who don't really care about red versus blue anymore. Like, I care about a free America versus a captured America. And I feel that's where we are right now. So I think it's really important that we sort of reimagine what these parties look like and we don't feel like we're so entrenched. I think partially this comes back to Citizens United decision, and it comes back to what you were talking about how unequal money has made unequal power. And it's really the power that's the bigger problem, because these super rich people, once Citizens United came down, were able to buy elections, were able to buy politicians. Lobbying groups were able to do that. You see people behaving in a way that you think, why are they doing that? That's completely antithetical to what their job is. And you realize it's because they're getting money from X, Y, and Z company, X, Y, and Z lobby group, X, Y, and Z billionaire who has a different agenda than they say 800,000 people they're supposed to be representing. And I think that that's what we need to get away from. And I think most people would say that's what we need to get away from, because at the end of the day, it seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, looking around the country, I think we can see that the checks and balances have been dismantled. Like, I have talked to people who say, I don't understand how this is even happening. Is the president supposed to have this much power? And I say, no, the president is not supposed to have this much power, right? He's only able to get away with everything he's doing because our Republican Congress has completely abdicated their responsibility to hold him to account on anything. Right now, the government is still closed. And our far-right Supreme Court, which is the top judicial branch in the land, is just allowing him to get away with it because it was stacked with people whose job was to allow him to get away with it. But our Constitution itself doesn't give the president this much power. And you have argued that Trump is a symptom rather than the problem, that he's not the only problem we have in this country, that there are major threats to liberal ideas and liberalism in general coming from both the left and the right, which is how we get to the political party thing. What do you think we should be doing?
Let me just come back to something you started with, and that is, I draw some hope from the fact that every time you ask people and you look at the polling data about things like money in politics, about
Right.
things like economic inequality, about the minimum wage. I mean, our federal minimum wage is at an obscenely low $7.25 an hour, right? That's about
Yeah, no one can live on that.
$15,000
No one.
for a full-time job, right? It is just morally grotesque. And people don't want it, right? They don't want housing costs to be this high. They don't want billionaires running their government, right? They want big money out of politics, and there are opportunities to be seized here, right? Americans don't like the levels of CEO pay, right? If they're asked what they'd like CEOs to earn as a kind of rough ratio of ordinary workers, it comes in way low. It's not like 300 to 1, which is what we're seeing now. It's closer to like 7 to 1, right? And one of the things that political scientists have found consistently is that the policy preferences of ordinary voters in both parties fall to the left of party elites. So there are opportunities to be seized if we can just, again, tap into this alienation and begin offering some bolder solutions. So I would definitely like to see candidates run for office embracing what I would call a kind of left populist agenda to some extent. I mean, yeah, they should run. They should begin running on a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics. They should begin running on an $18 federal minimum wage and universal pre-K.
Universal health care, baby.
Things.
I don't know how that's not the most obvious at this point when we're watching what's happening.
Affordable childcare. I mean, these are things that are popular in this country, and we have to be, we have to succeed. Again, so it's really important, again, that we come together and oppose this administration's egregious assaults on liberal institutions. But it's also really important that we begin reaching for some of these broadly popular economic priorities that can begin bringing people back who are alienated, people without college degrees in this country who are alienated by the sort of elite tenor of our political discourse, understandably alienated, right? To begin drawing them back into a kind of saner and still liberal politics.
Yeah. So what you were talking about at the beginning was liberalism, which you said, is a huge tent and fits both the Republican proper and the Democrat proper. Then we had neoliberalism, which was kind of market capitalism first, guy with the most money wins, that kind of a vibe that we've had for, say, the past 40 years, and we are seeing blowing up the country right now. Then what you're talking about a little bit feels like radical liberalism, which is like a return to what liberal values were supposed to mean about freedom and truth. And what I always say, like, read what you want to read, love who you want to love, marry who you want to marry, get divorced if you want to. The government has no purpose and no place in any of those personal decisions. It's a personal freedom manifest that then your government should represent the people. Do you believe that that kind of liberalism, that kind of radical liberalism can really pull us back from where we are now?
I believe that very deeply. I'm glad you asked. Yeah. So radical liberalism is a term that I use in the book to to describe the particular version of liberalism that I would want us to lean into right now. And I should say it's not, as I've said already, it's not something I've invented, right? It's been part of our political conversation.
And it's not even particularly radical.
Years.
It's like what most people want.
I believe that is true. But let me just point to what is radical liberalism. For me, it's three things, right? So first, radical liberalism takes the idea of human equality seriously. We've touched on this already, right? It looks to extend the promise of freedom to everybody in our society on equal terms. And it places special emphasis on expanding freedom and opportunity for those who have least of it, right? So because of this emphasis, it's really pretty well equipped to provide a searing indictment of our current economic status quo. Second, and this is something we haven't talked about much yet, you said that rightly that the idea of freedom is and has been for a very long time the central political value in our political discourse. And that's really important strategically. Whoever manages to win the struggle to appropriate and use this idea more effectively is likely to win the political argument. So there are deep disagreements between the right and the left as to what we mean when we use the term freedom. And radical liberalism embraces what I would call a robust idea of freedom that says, freedom, the kind that's really worth having, really means the power to make choices, right? So building a free society means building a society in which people actually possess the power to shape their own lives in the ways that matter most to them. And understood in that way, it's just very clear that having access to affordable childcare and not having to fork over half of your income towards rent, right, and having healthcare, these are things that expand your set of options, expand your set of opportunities, and empower you to actually shape the course of your life instead of living constantly paycheck to paycheck, right, with a diminished set of options. So it invites us to ask, look, what resources, what opportunities do people need to actually have the power to make choices in their lives? And then finally, radical liberalism is committed to finding ways to mobilize ordinary people and build grassroots citizen power. And this relates to something we've talked about already. I mean, we're a semi-oligarchy already in this society. Wealthy people have their hooks so deep into the policymaking process, the media ownership, right? And we have to find ways of building counterpower wherever we can. So radical liberalism sees that project of building citizen counterpower as integral to the project of extending the promise of freedom to everybody.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm a tiny bit, even though I get super depressed, I'm a tiny bit hopeful these days because I know that what this current government has been doing over the past 9 months, they have been attempting to push us into riots, into violence, into hating each other. And I find it really interesting that we keep returning to community. I think they really thought we would be violent at the No Kings rally. I think they really thought we would be violent when they sent ICE into our streets. I really think they thought we would be violent if they stopped SNAP benefits. I think that was a choice. I think they wanted starving people because starving people do crazy things. And then they would have a justification for this military overreach that they want to take. And yet I find that American people are rising to the occasion over and over again. They're filling up food banks. They're buying people groceries at the store. They are helping each other out in ways that I don't think this government was prepared for because they're such a cynical group that they didn't expect us to behave the way we're behaving, especially when the media does their bidding. The media pitches their ideas. The media gives them all this grace. And I think you and I both agree that media companies and social media personalities have a real lack of accountability when it comes to truth. And it allows people to live in these bubbles where they don't actually know what's going on. And I feel like suddenly people are sort of waking up to the healthcare crisis that has the government closed and to the food crisis that the Republicans clearly wanted us to experience, that the courts stopped. The courts, one part of our 3 checks of power actually got the money released to feed the people on SNAP when our government wouldn't have done it. And I think that is actually community coming together in a way that you're talking about. In this third way, finding ways to mobilize regular citizens to work together. I think that's always going to be what we have to do if we're going to fight this clear kleptocracy that we are dealing with right now with this oligarchy and power. And you just have to look at what I was saying, that Great Gatsby party the other day on the eve of SNAP benefits, expiring and 42 million Americans not having enough food. They literally had a Gatsby party. And I thought, boy, somebody really missed the mark on that one. Like they just did not see the irony of what they were doing, but I think the people did.
I mean, it's the Gatsby parties that's, as you said, the sort of gold-plated ballroom that's going to go up on the wreckage of what used to be the East Wing, right? It's Trump, talking about retiling the various
bathroom over and over again
in the White House. I mean, yeah, there's a kind of tone deafness to this administration. Yeah, it's just, yeah. And I mean, but this, relates to something you said earlier. I mean, I was reading a piece the other day about how many billions of dollars Trump's cabinet is worth, right? I think it's 7.5 billion, excluding Trump himself, right? So, I mean, the people who are running this government, our Secretary of Commerce is worth over 3 billion. Our Secretary of Education is worth over 3 billion. Scott Bessent, 600 million. I mean, what is it that you expect exactly when these are the people who you surround yourself with? A politics that's so fundamentally out of touch with the needs of ordinary people. I mean, it's the SNAP benefits. In Vermont here, November 1st was the day when people started experiencing sticker shock around the Affordable Care Act subsidies, right? And so many are seeing their premiums double. Projections here in Vermont are that 45 6,000 people are going to lose their health care as a result of the big ugly bill, right, that Trump and his minions passed this last summer. I mean, it's all of this stuff. If there is a silver lining in any of this, it's that people seem increasingly outraged and appalled by this stuff, and that you see a kind of building resistance both in the No Kings movement, in the courts. I mean, the district courts, are dealing Trump setback after setback right now, and the SNAP benefits being one of them. I mean, we'll see what happens with that exactly. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing some real powerful and peaceful resistance. And I totally agree with you. I think Trump is absolutely itching to invoke the Insurrection Act, and that a lot of what he's doing here is deliberate provocation intended to elicit a kind of violent response. And frankly, I think, it's only a matter of time before something goes really wrong, right? I mean, you can't send National Guard troops in. I mean, we've all seen the video. I mean, it's appalling stuff without eventually people starting to get hurt in a serious way. And then what's going to happen, is that the administration is going to be tempted to initiate a wider crackdown. We're holding our breaths.
Yeah, I think everyone in America is holding their breath every day, because I think ultimately what we want is what your book tells us, which is freedom for all. And what we're watching is the opposite of that. So it is really essential that we do the things that could bring us back from the brink, and then we build something far better. I do think that there's hope in candidates like Mamdani, in leadership like Gavin Newsom pushing back and Pritzker pushing back, and the new leaders that I hope we get today in states like Virginia and New Jersey, people that are going to have the wherewithal and the guts to fight back, because we can't forget that we live in a federalist system, that our states have vast amounts of power to organize, to plan, to fight back. Even with the SNAP benefits that we're talking about, the states were right there. Gavin Newsom brought the National Guard in to food banks. Maura Healey in Massachusetts doubled her budget. They were out there trying to help the people. And we can only hope that the people start to notice who's on their team. And it doesn't necessarily mean the old Democratic Guard. It means the new leaders that are doing it in a new way. Like you're saying, in a radical liberal way that brings us back to freedom and the way the country was founded, rather than what we have become by sort of bastardizing those ideas from the foundation. So thank you so much for joining us today and for writing this book. Honestly, I hope everybody will go and read it. I know you have to go off and teach, but please tell people how they can follow your work and how they can buy your book.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to have this conversation. And the book is available through Yale University Press and through whatever online bookseller you like to shop at. I really hope that folks will find something of value there. And again, really appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you for coming, truly. So that was Alex Zakaras, reminding us that there are a lot of challenges ahead, but there's also real opportunity to be seized. We need to rebrand what being liberal means and who liberals work for. Liberalism is supposed to be about tolerance and new ideas and respecting those with different opinions, and above all, supporting individual rights and personal freedom. Professor Zakaras points out that unequal power is actually a bigger problem than unequal wealth. So we have to be focused on rebuilding citizen power through things like organized labor, independent media, community-run services. If our institutions are broken, we can't just complain. We have to build something better. I want to thank Alex for joining us today, and you for caring enough about democracy to be here. Now go check out Freedom for All, What a Liberal Society Could Be, and inspire yourself to imagine a better world than this. Until next week, PG out. Before you go, if you're already a premium member of this podcast, thank you. And if you're not, I want to ask you to support my work. We are living through a propaganda nightmare right now. We are literally being fed lies by liars. So if you see worth in what we're doing, please consider becoming a member of Politics Girl Premium by going to politicsgirl.com and signing up. You will get this podcast ad-free along with my rants sent directly to your inbox. So even if my work is silenced on social media, you will still get access to the truth. There's a link to sign up in the bio of this episode, but also at politicsgirl.com. And as always, please like and share and follow this podcast so we can grow our audience. Because the more people who have access to real information, the better chance we have to build a community ready and willing to fight back. As always, thank you for your time and support. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.